A very good afternoon to our respected principal, Ms. Shunglu, our vice principal, Ms. Banerjee, our two eminent guest speakers for today, and dear audience. To successfully execute the second event in the celebration of the World Heritage Week, let us all join together for a short prayer to seek the blessings of the Almighty.
असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Supriya, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you, ma'am. We in Sri Sri Academy firmly believe that without the blessings and wishes of our respected principal, all our endeavors remain incomplete. So, I would now request Ma'am Shunglu to address the gathering. Ma'am, over to you.
I completely don't believe in that. Good afternoon and namaskar. I totally don't believe that I need to speak in every such forum, but I accept your affection and your respect, and I am here to formally welcome our guests today, Ms. Shubha Das Maulik and Ms. Anjum Kotial, on behalf of the management of Sri Sri Academy. To such a wonderful session. We are looking forward, and I'm eagerly awaiting the unraveling of the film Calcutta Sonata and the journey into Calcutta's cultural past and how the piano became such an important part of Calcutta's cultural scenario. I am also know very little, and I am looking forward to this session. So once again, behalf of all the students, teachers, management, a warm welcome, Ms. Katyal and Ms. Shubha Maulik.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You are always there with us, we know. Now we proceed with our next segment, and it's time to introduce our distinguished speakers for today's event. And for this, I would request Abhilasha Nandi of Class 8A to introduce Ma'am Shubha Das Maulik. Over to you, Abhilasha.
A media teacher and documentary filmmaker, Ma'am Shubha is a postgraduate in physics who switched over to media after more than 10 years of teaching physics at the undergraduate level. She has been head of the Film Studies and Mass Communication Department at St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and also the head of the Media Science Department at iLead Institute. She has been the principal instructor for 2 online courses on the Swayam platform. Presently, she is a visiting faculty at Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, Vishwa Bharat University, and at Alia University. She is the founder secretary of Vichitra Pathshala. Her recent independent films, Calcutta Sonata and Dwelling in Traveling, have been critically acclaimed and won some prestigious awards. Her film, Promising Plastic Polymers, won an award at the ninth National Science Film Festival and also a special award at the Eco Art Contest organized by American Center and SAFE. Recently, she conducted an online filmmaking course for teachers.
Thank you so much, Abhilasha. Now to introduce our other guest, Ma'am Anjum Katyal, I would request Shagun Das of 8E to come forward.
Ma'am Anjum is an editor, writer, translator, critic, and educator. She was chief editor of Segal Books, editor of the Segal Theatre Quarterly, editor of the online journal Art and the City, and director of the APJ Kolkata Literary Festival for 8 years. She has authored several books on theatre and is currently curator, New Festival of Arts and Ideas, Shantiniketan. She is an enthusiastic member of INTAC and the Calcutta Heritage Collective, a voluntary citizens initiative to restore, revive, and reuse built heritage in Kolkata and West Bengal.
Thank you, Shagun. Movies touch our hearts and awaken our vision, change the way we see things. They take us to other places, they open doors and minds. With this, I would request Omkar Mukhopadhyay of Class 8A to introduce the film Calcutta Sonata.
Calcutta Sonata tells the story of the gradual assimilation of the grand musical instrument piano into the cultural fabric of the city. Through the piano, the Indian was introduced to the ideas of chords and harmony as opposed to a pure line of melody. Indian musical compositions were infused with the Western ideas, and the well-tempered keys of the piano were struck to yield to the microtones of the Indian raga. As the piano proliferated in the city, the support system to maintain the pianos in tune also grew stronger. The grand instrument found its place in the Indian homes, schools, churches, playhouses, cinema, and literature. The city continues to play with 88 keys.
Thank you so much, Omkar. In the words of the legendary director, Satyajit Ray, the director is the only person who knows what the film is about. Therefore, I would request Shubha ma'am to now take us forward to the most awaited segment of today's event, discussion on her film, Calcutta Sonata. Ma'am, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Supriya, and thank you all the students for your very warm welcome and the notes of introduction. And it's indeed a great honor to be invited here to speak about one of my favorite films, Calcutta Sonata, for which I have put in several years, not several, it's around 3 years of work. So anyway, so we have some clippings lined up, and I think Anjum ma'am will also ask me some questions. But to give you an introduction to my film and maybe to how a documentary filmmaker approaches her work. Now, I don't know whether all the students who are listening here, how much you are exposed to documentary films, because in movie halls in India, documentary films are not released. The television channels do not have slots for documentary films in India, I'm saying. They do not have slots for documentary films. So you get to watch documentary films only in film festivals. And if there are private screenings or if there are sessions like this in schools and all. So Indian audience by and large is not exposed so much to the the genre of documentary films and the various styles in which documentary films are made. So that way, for the young audience here, for the school students here, I don't know what kind of expectation you have for watching the film, because it's not like something with a very strong narrative structure and a protagonist and antagonist and things like that. Of course, the main protagonist of the film is the piano, and what I can assure that you will get to hear a lot of good music and also watch the musicians play a lot of good music of different genres played on the piano. So that is one positive thing about the film that I can assure to everybody. Okay. And slowly we will get into a discussion about the film, why I decided to make the film and how I structured it and all that. But I think just as a warming up thing, we can play the prelude of the film, just the beginning part of the film, perhaps we can play.
I sometimes remember a story my father once told me. The story of a piano playing by itself in an old house and haunting it with its uncanny air. At night, the piano would play itself. Struck by unseen fingers, the notes filled the sleeping house with a random melody. Ghosts, whispered the servants. Gradually, the discordant nocturne became an accepted descant to the creak and groan of the old mansion as it settled to rest after the bustle of the day. The piano played on, unnoticed. And then, one day, its secret was revealed.
Yeah, so that's how the film begins. So now I think perhaps Anjum ma'am can take the discussion forward. What are the various things you think the students would be interested in knowing?
Thank you so much, Shubhati, and I'd like to firstly thank everybody for asking me to be part of this wonderful event. To all the Sri Sri Academy authorities and team that has made this possible. I've been an admirer of Shubhati many years and have seen her working over time. I know that she is one of the most innovative and dedicated educators in the area of mass media that one can find, and she's given her life to bringing this particular discipline and genre to young people. It's very today Calcutta Sonata, which I remember having the pleasure of seeing some years ago and revisited with such joy when I saw it again just before when we were preparing for this event. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. So I know that we are not really being able to interact with students, but I just wanted to ask you, wasn't that a wonderful, exciting beginning to a film? Documentary films, people tend to feel are very dull and boring and all about facts and figures and not really anything to do with adventure and mystery and atmosphere. But I love the beginning of this film because it's got everybody's favorite genre, I think, which is the ghost story. And it captures the beautiful atmosphere of an old, deserted house full of memories and full of the past. And we have so many such houses and such buildings and interiors here in our city. Maybe some of you live in some of them. And then there's also the humor of discovering that that dangerous, scary ghost that was playing away at night was actually nothing but a mischievous little mouse. So I think that's just a lovely beginning to the film. And as we go along, we get to know so much more about the piano and its relationship with music. So first, let me ask Shubha Das Malik, how did you come to making this film, Shubhadi? We've lived with the idea of Western music and the piano and its life in Calcutta in so many ways for so long, but what intrigued you enough to make it into a film?
Yeah, actually, that goes back to my days in ILID when I used to be a full-time faculty in ILID. And the year was, I think, 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And that year was being celebrated as 400 years of India-British relationship. Why 400? Because starting from the day of when Sir Thomas Roe visited Jahangir's court, so that was taken as the beginning. So in these 400 years of India-Britain relationship, what have been the cultural exchanges, give and takes, etc., etc. So there were, and it was happening in the evening at ILID, and there was a Skype discussion with Cambridge. So there were some scholars in Cambridge, and we were there at ILID, and there was a live discussion. So naturally, the things like the railways and other things, the industry, etc. This thing came, of course, Western education, English education, all these things. And somewhere, while I was listening to all that, that I got this idea about this piano, because piano as an instrument is very mesmerizing. You can't have enough of it. It has that seductive power. So while listening to the discussions and all the ideas thrown up, this idea of this piano came up. So why not explore the journey of the piano against the backdrop of the city Calcutta, in the city Calcutta? And then I started doing some research, and I found that there are so many aspects to it. Not only the playing of the piano, but also the transportation of the piano, maintaining the piano, repairing the piano, and so many other things. So slowly, I started gathering information. I made a list of the resource persons who might be helpful. Of course, Tony Braganza was almost in my list. Okay, and I felt that there is a film in it. There is a strong possibility of making a film. And that's how the journey began. Slowly, very tentatively, very, a little by little, I moved forward. So that way, yeah.
So it was really like a journey for you as well.
Yes,
a journey into the story of the piano in Calcutta.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I remember you have some lovely scenes of how the first piano actually arrived in our city. And it's lowered from a ship, much like a huge elephant is lowered. Yes,
right.
That was a lovely part of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going to watch another clip from the film now so that we can ask some more questions about it?
So actually, since you praised the prelude to the film and all that, so before we go over to another clip, I would like to say something about the structuring of the film, because as I said, that tentatively I started.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, yes. Making a list of the persons like pianists, piano teachers, etc., who might contribute to the film. I went and met Jyotish Dasgupta. I went and met Fauzia Marikar, had long discussions with them. I even went to Calcutta School of Music. Definitely Tony Braganza. He gave me a long list of the pianos that are there, including the pianos of the piano in the Mallik's house, Marble Palace, etc. So,
yes,
I mean, the things was, there was a lot of interesting information, interesting people who would say nice things, who would play the piano, but giving it a structure was the biggest challenge for me. So that is in a documentary film that often happens, that you have the material, but you're putting it in a structure that would be engaging and that would hook the audience. That many a times becomes a problem, that where would you begin? Okay, and how would the film end? Because this film definitely the story doesn't have a definitive ending. It's a continuous story.
Right.
The story is going on. But the film has to end somewhere. The film has to begin at a point and it has to end somewhere. So I was struggling, very much I was struggling for many years. And my daughter has also helped me with the editing. Although there have some other editors have also contributed, because she lives in Bombay and I live in Kolkata. So we were struggling with the structure, that how to begin and how to make the beginning engaging, etc., etc. And then I came across this little memoir in a book, which I felt like adapting myself, because I thought that this will be a nice beginning, a very that ghost story plus nostalgia and so many other things mixed into it. So that is how, I mean, I got the beginning after a lot of struggle with the material. I finally got the beginning, and I used this as a prelude. But of course, people might get a wrong impression that the whole film is like a ghost story. Unfortunately, that is not the case here. But this is just a prelude, just to hook the audience. So that's how I got the beginning. But fitting so much diverse information into a structure has been a big challenge to me. Okay. And before I go over to I show you next clipping, something I would like to share with you is that when my daughter was editing the film, she kept asking me, why are you making this film? Where is the story in it? She couldn't find a story in it, because she says that the British have gone they have made so many colonies everywhere. They have got the piano. So what is unique about the story? What is the peg of your story? I don't get the peg of your story. So where is the story? And then when she was getting more into the material, she said that when the Tagores were experimenting with the piano and they are trying to create Indian music with a Western instrument, then she said, here is the story. Finally, this is, so you make a film only on this thing. That this is what happened when the piano came to Calcutta. This is what the Bengalis did with the piano. Okay, this is where the story is. That's what he said. That is the peg of the story. But of course, I have put in other things also into this film. So then, since Anju wanted to show, go to the next clipping. So maybe now we can see, have a glimpse of the next clipping, where we see what the Tagores did with the piano and how they Indianized it and how they adapted it to the Indian culture. I mean, that is where this cross-cultural influence actually begins. So let's
absolutely,
and then we can carry on with the discussion.
আমাদের পরিবারে শিশুকাল হইতে গান চর্চার মধ্যেই আমরা বাড়িয়া উঠিয়াছি। আমার পক্ষে তাহার একটা সুবিধা এই হইয়াছিল, অতি সহজেই গান আমার সমস্ত প্রকৃতির মধ্যে প্রবেশ করিয়াছে।
That there are a lot of songs that Tagore was influenced by his older brother, Jyotirindranath Tagore, who was a fine pianist and probably played the violin as well.
জ্যোতিরিন্দ্রনাথের এই পিয়ানো বাজনা তাকে উদ্বুদ্ধ করেছিল ভারতীয় রাগরাগিণীকে ভেঙে চুরে গড়ে নিতে। এটা আমার কথা নয়, রবীন্দ্রনাথের কথা। তিনি রাগরাগিণীগুলোকে এমনভাবে ভেঙে চুরে নিতেন যে তার মধ্যে একটা অন্য মাদকতা সৃষ্টি হতো, এবং সেটা তিনি করতেন কিন্তু পিয়ানো বাজিয়ে। তো এই ক্ষেত্রে দেখা যায় যে তিনি এরকম অনেক রাগরাগিণীকে নতুন নতুন চেহারা দিয়েছেন, যেরকম ইটালিয়ান ঝিঁঝিট। আমাদের ভারতীয় রাগের মধ্যে ঝিঁঝিট রাগ আছে, যেটি গীত হয়, ঝিঁঝিট রাগে গান। সেখানে তিনি ইটালিয়ান স্টাইল অফ প্লেয়িং বা ইটালিয়ান স্টাইল অফ রেন্ডারিং, আমরা গান করতে গেলে রাগিনী গাইতে গেলে যেভাবে আমরা রেন্ডার করি সেভাবে না রেন্ডার করে একটা স্ট্যাকাটো সিস্টেমে, স্ট্যাকাটো মানে থেমে 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 একটা যাওয়ার প্রবণতা, রাগরাগিনীর চলমানতাটাকে অন্যভাবে ব্যবহার করে তো তিনি তৈরি করেছিলেন। এবং তাই তিনি তার গানেতে যখন মাথায় নির্দেশ করলেন রাগের নাম, সেখানে লিখলেন ইটালিয়ান ঝিঁঝিট। খমগো সখা যোগব্রতে বাধা দিও না। এইটাই যদি আমরা কীর্তনের আকরে মানে ধরি তাহলে কিরকম হয়, খমগো সখা খমগো সখা যোগব্রতে বাধা দিও না। কিন্তু যখনই পিয়ানোর বা ওই পাশ্চাত্য রীতিতে জ্যোতিরিন্দ্রনাথ এটাকে করছেন, সেইটাকেই অন্যভাবে ফেলে দিচ্ছেন তালে। খমগ সখা, খমগ সখা, যোগব্রতে বাধা দিও না, প্রেমের কথা আর বলো না।
এক সময়ে পিয়ানো বাজাইয়া জ্যোতিদাদা নূতন নূতন সুর তৈরি করায় মাতিয়াছিলেন। প্রত্যহই তাহার অঙ্গুলি নৃত্যের সঙ্গে সঙ্গে সুরবর্ষণ হইতে থাকিত। আমি এবং অক্ষয়বাবু তাহার সেই সদ্যজাত সুরগুলিকে কথা দিয়ে বাঁধিয়া রাখিবার চেষ্টায় নিযুক্ত ছিলাম। গান বাঁধিবার শিক্ষানবিশে এইরূপে আমার আরম্ভ হইয়াছিল।
এটা একটা অদ্ভুত ওদের বিচরণ ছিল, শুধু একটা পিয়ানোকে কেন্দ্র করে। তিনি পিয়ানো বাজানোয় একটা অগ্রণী ভূমিকা পালন করেছেন, শুধু বাড়ির মধ্যে নয়, বাড়ির বাইরেও। এবং তখন জ্যোতিরিন্দ্রনাথ এই পিয়ানো বাদন প্রত্যেকটা মানুষের কাছে আদৃত হয়েছে। উনি এই বাদনকেই কেন্দ্র করে একসময় ব্রাহ্ম সমাজে অর্গান বাজাতেন, হারমোনিয়াম বাজাতেন। তো উনি অনেক রকমেরই যন্ত্র বাজাতে পারতেন, কিন্তু
Yeah.
So that was a wonderful introduction into how the piano became so comfortably integrated with earlier traditions of music in Calcutta. And as I was just beginning to say before the clip started, Shubhadi, would you agree that Calcutta is one city where ideas from all over the world, whether it's the West or the further East, have always been taken in and, in a sense, made part of the city's heritage and tradition?
Absolutely.
Rather than just being imposed from on top. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so this is very true of Calcutta. So many influences here have come in and those have been absorbed. In fact, when people in Bombay, Sri Lanka, other places, they watched this film, they also said that this is very unique about the story of piano in Calcutta. How it has been, the instrument has been Indianized, a new kind of music has emerged from it. This aspect of the story you won't get maybe in other parts of the world, the way it has been indigenized here. Now here in my research, what I found that my research was distinctly categorized into 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. Now in the 18th century, mainly what was happening is that the Indians were slowly getting exposed to the piano, to the English language, to Western culture, etc., etc. Okay, so it was the Britishers or the Western people who were doing the experiments. All right. So in the film, there are two very interesting experiments mentioned, both of which happened in the 18th century. One is Hindustani air, which is as good as forgotten in India today, but it has been revived elsewhere in King's College, etc., in England. Hindustani air was that when there used to be this lavish nautch parties, jalsa, which we say at that time, where the Britishers also, the men as well as women, they went and they had a good time. So the singers and dancers there, so that naturally the Britishers were through going to the nautch party, they got exposed to a very different kind of music. So they were curious, they wanted to explore. So they brought this dancer, the singers home, and they said, you sing for us. And they used to write down the notation. Now, in the process of writing down the notation, that are microtonal variations, etc., all that got lost. But then they played on the harpsichord. Okay, so they made a collection of these notations, which was also published. They called it Hindustani air, a new genre of music. And then in Western concerts, etc., they performed these also. Definitely in Calcutta, but in England also they performed it and people liked it. Okay, so this Hindustani air, a new genre of music called Hindustani air, got created in Calcutta in the 18th century. But that was the work of the Britishers mainly. Two British ladies, and there was a William Hamilton Bird. He was a piano teacher, very popular piano and harpsichord teacher. He actually compiled the notations and brought out the book. That is one experiment. The other experiment is Lebedev's, Gerasim Lebedev. He was a Russian.
Yes.
So he wrote that first Bengali play, which was enacted on the proscenium. So in that, to make that play popular, he included a very popular Bengali song there, okay, written by Bharatchandra Ray. But he did a musical arrangement there, keeping those, instrumental interludes in the stanzas, where he played Western instruments, including the piano. Lebedev was also a teacher of piano and violin for the British ladies who were here. Okay, so, and that was maybe all the Bengalis who went to watch the play, maybe their first exposure to the piano. Okay, but very much into a Bengali play, and as an which played as an interlude in a Bengali song. So, but those experimentations were being done by the Western people. And then the third thing that happened at the end of the 18th century is when Christians, Bengalis got converted to adopted Christianity. So these gospel songs were written in Bengali by William Carey and his associates, and those were sung also naturally in Bengali, but the tunes were Western. So in the churches, the piano played, the accompaniment of the piano, they sang. So this was in the Western, in the 18th century, where the experimentations or this crossing over, as we say, was the initiative was taken by the Western people. But in the 19th century, during the Bengal Renaissance, when the Indians became conscious about their roots, but at the same time with English education, they got so much of exposure. In the 19th century, we see these experimentations being done by the Indians. So the Tagores, of course, were in the forefront, but there were other contemporaries of Tagore like Vijayendra Ray and all. He didn't play the piano, but he also integrated a lot of Western element into his songs. So that is also there in my film. So those who watch the whole film, they can see that. So those initiatives were being taken by the Indians in the 19th century. So that's how
that's a fascinating little brief history of how ideas can interconnect and how people can grow by bringing in ideas from different parts of the world and enrich their own experience and their heritage. So I love the story about the Hindustani air travel to the west, while a lot of and we already also know that a lot of Tagore's very popular tunes were very influenced by Western folk songs.
Very much,
Especially Scottish and Irish folk songs. So it's wonderful to see a kind of natural intermingling of ideas and concepts. And you have some beautiful scenes of the organ being played by Johnny Purti in the church in St. John's.
Of that, organ
I know.
at the St. John's Church. That's beautiful. And that organist, unfortunately, he has expired. So
I know.
The organ is silent.
But I remember walking into that church and hearing that absolutely majestic sound of the organ.
Absolutely.
And that's also, so those of you who haven't seen the film, I would really say you should see the rest of it for all these beautiful scenes that are there. Should we see something else from the film now, Shubha?
So let's play that next clipping. That is again this, taking this Indianization forward, because the thing that was started by Jyotirindra Tagore and all, it didn't stop there. There were other musicians who came forward and they took it forward. Even they further fine-tuned it. One of them being V. Balsara, but here I won't play V. Balsara in the clipping, but it's somebody else who is playing, very young, very contemporary. So there are two small clippings. Since Supriya, both are small, we can perhaps play both of them. There are two small clippings, the North Calcutta and the other. Both are very small.
And while you're watching them, pay attention to the settings. There's some beautiful scenes of the old Calcutta streets and lovely interior of the old Calcutta houses and spaces. So keep an eye on that and the way they film so in such a lovely manner while we're listening to the music and listening to the talking.
Yes, Vishal. So can we go on to the next clip?
We shall play the North Calcutta. Acha, anyway, whichever. Play this, then play the North Calcutta one after this. Yeah, okay.
This is so soothing and so close to any major Western classical piece that you have, but has an infusion of great Indian ragas. Like when you hear this is typically a Bhairavi, which he plays in an instrument like piano and records. So if you hear, say, something like Dhoom Machade Dhoom in Bollywood, but it goes so well with this Bhairavi. You find all the composers finding a space in a instrument like piano because it has those two parts where you play the melody line beat oriental beat western and have your backup like a supporting instrumentalist on your bass clef.
Fusion is basically, to me,
I know this is. Yeah, let's play the other one, that North Calcutta thing, and then we can go for a discussion.
Can you give me 2 minutes? I'm just playing it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So while he is getting ready, so this is one thing I would like to say, that this is something that I had wanted to include in my film, but eventually didn't, which is the piano in Indian films, whether it is Bollywood films or Bengali films. You see that in the up to the 60s, the piano in so many films that the hero comes and plays the piano in so many ways. So whether it is Avara as early as Avara, or whether it is as late as Ghore Baire, even now, even this Sujit's this thing, Srijit Mukherjee's film, Boshanto Eshe Geche. So that is also, he is recreating a past scene, but it is around a piano. Okay, so piano was such an integral part in Indian cinema. So I wanted to include that, but it wasn't. I mean, as I said, structuring became such a big problem. So I left it out. So maybe the clippings of this. Another reason I left out is getting the copyright from this film. So
That's right.
That was another reason.
That's a practical problem. Yeah, but I think that leaving the choice of what you can't include and what you have to leave out is always such a difficult one.
Yes.
And while you were talking about how pianos were such a part of Indian movies, Hindi movies and Bengali movies, I think that's true for a lot of us who grew up a little earlier. But because the piano as an instrument became kind of replaced by the keyboards, which doesn't have the romance and the grandeur and the presence of a piano, I think the very younger generation of students may not have seen a piano on the screen as much as we did when we were watching films as youngsters. Maybe, I'm not sure. But this is something that has happened now, which is that the keyboard has kind of replaced the piano for live performances as well as in homes where people learn.
Yeah. Like
Are we ready with the next clip?
Yeah, in Park Street.
Yes, ma'am. Do I share?
Yeah, okay, you play this and then we'll continue with the discussion here.
Balsara, Gyan Prakash Ghosh, Hemanta Mukherjee, or say Sholil Chaudhary started to script Western music in a typical Indianized notation with the sargam, the saregama padhanisa, written in Bengali syllables, in Bengali alphabets, you can say. Like you can see, they wrote it from the years. They would hear it and write in Indian scriptures in Indian alphabets with all the octaves separate with different marks on top and bottom and the glided notes. Of course, they knew that a key set won't have the meer, the gliding notes in between, but they tried to use the paddle in a strange way so that it could help you in the usage of the meer. Even they wrote ragas like, you can see this is an original written script from V. Balsara. Maybe he shared it with Gyan Prakash Ghosh. This is in Jhijoti. Then you have something in Nad Bhairav. So I'll play for you one of those. Bilawal, which has all the straight white keys and has no kind of minor notes involved. This flow of our old North Calcutta lineage, of the Tagorean thoughts, of songs from old composers, of say a Bara Bazaar, which offers you so much of variety, which offers you, the narrow lanes with beautiful colors. It had a complete different thing. Even if you walk down through the area we are born in the old part of the city, you find Roman structures. So you get to see a piece of Rome in Calcutta.
The piano entered.
Yeah, so this is that ragas being played on the piano. So, yeah, so Anjum, as I was saying that you were mentioning the keyboard has replaced the piano. So in the Park Street restaurants also, this Trinkas, etc., Shashi Puri and her husband, they said earlier it used to be the piano, but now it is the keyboard. So the piano they had kept on rent, which they have returned to Braganzas, and now they have the keyboard there, which is played live in the evenings. So that's the thing, that the keyboard is replacing the piano. Yeah. Is Anjum still there with us? Connectivity is...
I think so, ma'am. Ma'am has got disconnected.
Okay. Okay.
We'll back in a while.
Yeah. Okay, so then I hope she comes back. So we'll continue with the discussion here. So as I was saying, that 19th century was the era of experimentations where Indian were trying to adapt the instrument, understand the instrument, and play Indian tunes with this. One thing I don't know, I have wondered that since Rabindra Sangeet lends itself so well to the piano, and so many Rabindra Sangeets have been composed while playing the piano, but at this Sangeet Bhavan in Shantiniketan, there are no piano lessons given. I mean, piano is not a part of one of the instruments taught. So that I have often wondered, why is that so? So anyway, so now from the 19th to the 20th century, 20th century brings a lot of, because of the, particularly during the Second World War, so many American soldiers came and stayed here. So they brought a lot of their cultural things from there, one of them being jazz. So in fact, the Indians got to hear jazz music, most probably from the American soldiers. Okay, but most probably, but I'm not 100% sure about that. All right, but all these other kinds of Western music was coming in Calcutta once again. And as Anjum said, that Calcutta is a place where things get integrated. People absorb the cultural influences. So in these hotels, of course, that the pianos were there, and those pianos were, many jazz pianists came, Dave Brubeck, etc. They came to Calcutta, they stayed at the Great Eastern Hotel, they played the piano. So all sorts of experimentations were happening. And then, of course, Park Street developed, where live music was played in all the restaurants. In fact, in this film, I think Carlton Kitto's last interview on camera is there in this film. Because Carlton Kitto breathed his last in 2016, and I had taken this particular interview in January 2016. I went to Carlton Kitto's house, I took that interview, and later on there was a jam session with Nandan Bakshi and all, so that also is there, which I haven't made the clipping, so you have to watch the film to see that. And a few months after that, I read in the newspaper that Carlton Kitto is no more. So most probably Carlton Kitto's last on-camera interview is what you see in my film here. I haven't used the whole thing, but at least a part of it is there. Okay, so this 20th century is further experimentation, new kinds of music, and particularly the new modern Western music was taking the front seat, and the musicians were also experimenting with that. Now, in that context, a very interesting story during my research I came across, that the piano at the Great Eastern Hotel, which used to be there at Maxim's Bar in Great Eastern Hotel, that fell into very bad shape because the economic West Bengal, there was a big economic downturn in West Bengal because of the Bangladesh Liberation War, and before that the Naxalite movement and all that. Okay, so all of us know that, particularly those who are my age, that West Bengal has passed through a very bad phase. Okay, so during that phase, naturally, this cultural flourishing didn't happen, and also the communist government, they said that all this Park Street culture, they said Opushangaskriti, and they levied heavy taxes. So that's when Park Street also lost some of its sheen, so to say. So around that time, this Great Eastern Hotel, the piano was signed, that there wasn't anybody to do or play serious music on the Great Eastern Hotel piano, and it slowly it degenerated. Nobody took care of it. Then when this hotel was bought over by Lalit Suri, then Lalit Suri's wife, she was determined to repair this piano, which eventually the Braganzas did. The Great Eastern Hotel piano was repaired by the Braganzas. So there is Anjum. Okay, welcome back. Yeah. So this story of this repairing the Great Eastern Hotel piano, and today it is there in the Great Eastern Hotel lobby, and it is played every evening. So, but that's the last clipping I have for you. So let's watch that last clipping, and then maybe we can go for some more.
Just before we get into the clipping, firstly to apologize, I lost the connection, so I missed that little bit. But also to say that my own involvement with music came back when I came back to Calcutta in the early 80s, and at that time the musicians, the Anglo-Indian musicians largely, there were still a few people who were playing live music on Park Street. And certainly this, but the new music you were talking about, Nandan Bagchi, Carlton Keto, it was wonderful to, Carlton was of course a guitarist par excellence, but every time we had a musical performance, the piano would be absolutely integral to it.
Right.
So it was wonderful to see that the movie has actually brought in the more recent aspect of the piano as well. So, and you've had lots of scenes in the Calcutta School of Music.
Yes.
You talk about which is still an active institution.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So are we ending now with the last clip?
Yeah, let's watch the last clip. Yeah. Then maybe some more discussion.
Yeah.
এটা কোম্পানির পিয়ানো হায়ার দেওয়া হয়, আর এই পিয়ানোটা রেসপিন বোর্ড খারাপ হয়ে গেছিল, টিউনিং দাঁড়ায় না, তার জন্য ব্লকটা চেঞ্জ করা হচ্ছে রেসপিন বোর্ডটা যাতে টিউনিং ঠিক থাকে। এটা 200 বছরের পিয়ানো, এটা পিয়ানোর নাম আর মডেল নম্বর দেখে আমরা বুঝতে পেরেছি এটা 200 বছরের পিয়ানো আছে।
The Great Eastern piano is also a very, very old piano, but I have seen that piano when I was a kid.
The hotel, as you know, was obviously founded by David Wilson. Though it was not called the Great Eastern Hotel, he named it after the Governor General at that point of time, Lord Auckland. So it was for many years called the Auckland Hotel. We bought this hotel in an open bid, and we actually bought the property in 2006, and the restoration started in 2007. It's quite emotional because when I came into this property, I saw this little piece lying in one corner, completely, it looked like a old wooden trunk, and it was lying in one corner, and someone had just kept it aside and said, look, we don't know why this is being kept, but you know, someone out there is really stupid because no one will even buy this for 10 rupees. And I was like, okay, what is this all about? So I had to explore before I ruled out of any possibility of us making any gains out of that piece of wood. And I realized that we were talking about a piano which probably is the rarest in the country. When people had a good look at it, they realized that this was an original M.F. Rashal German piano. But we then, of course, took that extra step to ensure that we restore it and bring it back to its original glory. And we reached out to this guy in Calcutta called Braganza. And when the team from the Braganzas came in, and their first look at the piano was like, what have they done?
It was very, very old, and it was in a absolute bad condition like the rest of the hotel. It was completely broken down and all that. And the new management took over, and she came to me and she said that, see, we are opening in 2 months' time. And I don't care what the expenses are, but I want that piano put back into original shape, and we want a complete overhaul and all that.
So when the Braganzas came in is when they realized that it was probably a little too late. But you know, we kept insisting. Their initial reaction was that, look, you should forget about it, and you know, probably the restoration of this piano will cost you more. And Dr. Suri was very, very insistent. She said, look, it really doesn't matter how much it costs, but we'd really like this revived.
So I took it up as a challenge and I did it, and we really brought it back to its old grand state.
Every musician needs an. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right, and you're ending with a tantalizing glimpse of musicians walking into trinkas.
Yeah.
Which for many, many years was one of the few places that still had live bands playing on Park Street.
Right.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, when everything else shut down, Mocambo's, Blue Fox, all of them got rid of their live bands due to all the kind of pressures you talked about. But Trinkas was the one place that never stopped its tradition of live music, and they still have bands even today.
Yes, yes.
For dining and dancing.
Exactly. Yeah. And no, in fact, when I went to interview them, Shashi Puri and Deepak Puri, they said at that time they were trying to revive jazz. On Saturday afternoons, they used to have this live jazz playing there. I don't know whether they're still continuing or not. So that live music is still there. And in fact, Shashi Puri is a very accomplished pianist.
That's
but
right.
she gave an interview. She didn't. She said, "You have so many pianists, so many people have performed. You forget it." So she didn't perform for me. But she gave an interview, and there are so many things that are left out in the film which are not included. So one of the things is that in Loreto House, how the nuns used to teach piano, because she passed out from Loreto House.
That's
and her initial lessons in piano were in Loreto House. So she have described very nicely the piano classes that used to happen in Loreto House. That first, that finger movement with, I think, that cardboard or paper keys, and then the children were allowed to play the actual piano. So that whole thing she described it. It's still there in my rushes, but it's not there in the film so much.
Gosh, I think the way it sounds for rushes can probably make another film in itself.
Yeah.
So are we going to move on to questions from the students now?
Yeah, if there are some questions, Supriya, are there questions from the students? You are mute. Supriya, you are muted.
Yes, the key doesn't work. Thank you so much, ma'am. We do have questions from our students, but before that, I must thank both of you for such an interesting discussion. It was truly mesmerizing. I was just listening to it like a story and really glued to it. So we will now move on to our question answer session. And to help us in this round, we have with us our student Devanshi Memani and our heritage teacher, Ms. Anandi Banerjee. So can we have the first question, Devanshi, from you?
Yes, ma'am. The first question is from a student audience to Shubha ma'am. Ma'am, did you find it easy to get information on this topic? Thank you.
Yeah, the information, it was easy because everybody was very cooperative. You know, the piano teachers, Tony Braganza, the other pianists who have appeared here. So everybody was very happy to talk about it, even at Calcutta School of Music. So getting information was not really difficult. Information is there, you know, it's there in the air. One has to just gather it. So getting information was not difficult. Yeah.
All right. So Devanshi, do we have another question? Can you put forward the question?
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. We have another very interesting question from another student to Shubha ma'am. Ma'am, has there been a similar assimilation of the piano with indigenous music in other parts of India? Thank you.
So assimilation of piano, yeah, this is, there have been some experiments in South India, because in the course of my research, on the internet, I read that in South India, there have been some experimentations, but I didn't go deep into it. So perhaps I am not qualified to answer, but those who are not from Bengal, who have watched the film, they say that this sort of assimilation, the way the Bengal Renaissance stalwarts, they absorbed the piano and integrated Western ideas into Indian music, that has not, I mean, this is unique to the story of piano in Calcutta. They have said that. Okay, but in spite of that, I'm saying that on the internet, I did see some interesting pockets of experimentation happening in South India. But right now, I'm not in a position to talk about that, because I don't have the correct information at the moment.
But as one thing that you did mention, Shubhadi, is that because of the popularity of the piano with Hindi and with film music.
Yes.
It is widely spread and in all the filmmaking centers, Bombay, of course, Chennai also in a big way.
Yes.
And both Bombay and Bangalore have very active schools of music also, where they have a lot of students who are using the piano, but playing all sorts of music like jazz and not just classical music on the piano, I think.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, through cinema, there have been, because piano up to the 60s played a very important role in film music. So there in that film world, there have been experimentations, both in Bengal and outside. That is very true. Yeah, any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. We have a list. Students are really excited. So Devanshi, I think we have our next question from Omkar Mukhopadhyay, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I request Omkar, he's here with us. He can ask his own question to ma'am directly. Omkar, come forward.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, my first question is, why are documentary films not showcased in cinema halls or television?
Okay, that is an excellent question. I'm happy you asked that. Because documentary films are perceived as boring. In a documentary film, it's perceived that documentary films will not attract the audience because they don't have stars and there isn't. This is, of course, about music, but otherwise there are no song and dance sequences, etc., etc. So that is why the cinema hall owners or the distributors, they don't want to, invest in that. And television, there was a time when we had only Doordarshan. That Doordarshan did have slots for documentaries, even if it was late night slot, but there were slots. But when this privatized television channels came, naturally they work for profit. And again, this perception is there that if we give time slot for a documentary rather than anything else, it's not going to attract, or we are not going to get TRPs, so might as well not do it. The only exception is NDTV, because NDTV still showcases documentaries under their NDTV in their NDTV profit channel. Okay, so but otherwise, none of the other private channels think that this will bring in TRPs and advertisers. So that is unfortunately the case. That's why. Acha, perhaps you do not know Omkar. We have this organization called Films Division that's under Government of India. Their headquarters is in Bombay. The Films Division makes documentaries. There was a time when they made monthly news reviews and they continue to make documentaries. So when we were young, even in the 80s, before in a movie hall, before a movie began, there was always either a newsreel, Indian news review from Films Division, or documentaries. Okay, so that was a kind of compulsory viewing for all the movie audiences. Maybe they went out for a smoke or something and then they came back when the actual movie started, whatever that is. But that was a time when this Films Division documentaries and news review were compulsorily played before the actual movie began in the movie halls. Then when the movie in the movie halls, they started, they were not doing good business anymore. Then the movie hall owners, they filed a case that why we have to compulsorily show this Films Division documentary and then share our revenues with Films Division when we ourselves are not earning enough revenue, we are running at a loss, etc., etc. And they won the case. Okay, so then after they won the case, after that, screening of these documentary films in the movie halls stopped. So that's
okay. Thank you for that piece of information, because I remember seeing the documentaries as a child growing up, before the main feature. But I didn't realize that was why they had lost. Thank you for asking that question,
Omkar. Yeah.
And ma'am, another question I have, ma'am, what is the difference between a documentary film and the films which we normally watch?
The films that you watch in the movie halls, those are stories, imagine it, maybe based in reality, based on true stories, but those are scripted and professional actors come and they act. Okay, so everything is planned, everything is scripted. And documentary is something where you capture a real life situation. Real people caught in real life situation, their life is captured and narrative is kind of woven from what is captured. So that's the difference. Okay.
Omkar, you have any questions? Okay, thank you, Omkar. Devanshi, so we move on to our next question. Is it from Soumya of class 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I would request Soumya, she's with us here, to ask her own question directly to ma'am. Come up, Soumya.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'd love to ask you, how long does the movie take from its starting direction, which is based around such a topic? Because it's you have turned the movie into an idea. You have turned the idea into a whole documentary. So I'd like to know, how long does it take to direct you?
Yeah. See, because in this particular case, the elements are so diverse. That is why perhaps it took me a little longer. So as I said, I started thinking about the film sometime in 2014 after that Skype meeting with the Cambridge teachers. Okay. And then I finished the movie in 2017. I finished the film in 2000, sometime middle September 2017 or something. So that is, but even after finishing the movie, I stumbled upon new information, but then, one can't go on and on and on. So that the research, you can say, is continuing, but the film eventually it got finished in the second half of 2017. So that's the thing. So about more than 2 years. Around 3 years, you can say. And this particular, that doesn't mean all documentary films may not take that long also. It depends on the subject. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Soumya, for your question. Devanshi, we move forward with our next question. It is from?
Ma'am, it is from Jia Chaudhary from class 12E.
So she is here with us. Can you please call her to ask the question?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to ask you, like in recent trends, we have this trend of EDM music. So I would really like to know your opinions about the fusion of electrical music and classical music.
That I think Anjum ma'am is better equipped because she is actually a singer and musician. I think Anjum ma'am will be able to answer that better. Yeah.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I think my straight answer would be that I am in favor of all kinds of experiments in fusion, whether starting in the 18th century with Western instruments and Indian concepts of music, or coming down even today with electronica and heavily digitalized and electronic music. I think that experimentation is so basic to the arts that when it stops, the arts die. So I think I love the idea of blending electronic music with more traditional forms and more acoustic forms. And as long as it works, and sometimes experiments fail and sometimes they succeed, but I think it's important to take the risk of trying out new blends and fusions and ideas. So unlike a lot of conservative musicians, I'm very much on the side of favoring this kind of fusion.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can we have the next question? Devanshi, the next question is from?
Ma'am, a final question for the day is to Shubha ma'am from a student. It's from Ishita ma'am. Ma'am, what is your message for students? How should they develop interest for a film like you have made, and also the interest for conservation of our heritage? Thank you.
Okay, so there are two questions here. One is developing an interest for this sort of films which they do not normally get to watch. And the other thing is interest for conservation of heritage. Now, as far as conservation of heritage is concerned, I think Sri Sri Academy is doing a very good work, because I was a part of the jury for that Heritage at Home. You had that Heritage at Home competitions a few months back, right? So I was invited as a part of the jury, and the kind of presentations the students did, that's excellent. So I think Sri Sri Academy is already in the forefront, that heritage consciousness, that the idea that you have to be conscious of your heritage and try to preserve it, be proud of it, that is already there. Okay, so you are doing a very good work. And as for this getting to know, developing a sense of appreciation for these films, many schools have these film clubs. I don't know whether your school has this film club or not. So in film clubs, such films can be shown, and if the filmmaker is available, filmmaker can come and discuss. So film clubs are a good way of giving the students exposure to different kinds of films which they normally don't get to watch. So in the school environment, the film club is a very good option. And there are many schools with film clubs, very active film clubs. Or we can have special screening festival of films like this, especially we can organize, and then interested students can also watch. It can happen online, or when better times return, we can do it in a hall also.
And Shubhati, Vichitra Pathshala, with which you're associated, is also doing a lot of work in this area, isn't it? With youngsters and schools and students.
Yes, in fact, in the past, we have had festivals of films. films made, produced by Films Division, and then a bouquet of films sent from Germany. Okay, so we have at festivals, and when we have these festivals of films, we always make it interactive, meaning that if there is an introduction to the film, and after the film, there is a very vibrant discussion, and then we give small activities on the films which the students submit later on. So we do this kind of thing, and if students are interested, we can again have another festival of films like this, little unusual films. So we can always have a festival of films like this. I think Rita Dasgupta ma'am has put in
written something.
Yeah.
Yes, a question.
Film editing club, as the students are being.
Ma'am, I'm very sorry to say we have very enthusiastic audience watching you, and I'm getting questions after questions. So that
I
was
also
not
have
a question. And we have a question from our principal, ma'am. Ma'am, please.
All right. So, as a teacher of history, I find that over the years, less children want to study history because of the entire volume that you have in Indian history and Western history. And I understand that the facts are not so important, but facts are definitely important when you understand a period or what happened after that or as a consequence of that. So I feel that, have you ever explored as a filmmaker that we could have a few documentaries instead of a few chapters in our history textbook? A documentary is different from a commercial film in the fact that it explores. It's also unraveling an issue, or especially this particular one, Calcutta Sonata, is a historical document because you used and pieced everything together. So why couldn't we just have 2 documentaries as part of our history syllabus at every level, right? Starting from class 4, you know?
Yeah, you should actually, you should have. And I'll tell you, not only documentaries, Kaveri asked me to write a piece on how Shaumitra's films can be brought into the classroom. So while writing that, I realized that Ray's film Ghore Baire, okay, that is an excellent kind of treatise on the Swadeshi movement, and which brings out the inner contradictions of the Swadeshi movement, the various cross currents during the Swadeshi movement through the stories of the 3 protagonists there. So there are some feature films also which are grounded in history, and those can also be screened, and with the ensuing discussion they can be brought.
Right, that's done. They've used films on the Diary of Anne Frank, World War II. They've used it on very famous icons. But something as simple as this, it reflects a trend, reflects ordinary people, reflects another genre like music. So I felt this, it's never been explored with any university or a board that, let's reduce 2 chapters, let's take in 2 documentaries, and, the teachers could
I think that's an excellent idea, and we can always do that. We can always
get children to enjoy, because see the questions that are coming in because they've enjoyed it. It struck off some chord in their mind and they want to know more. So that was just my comment.
Yeah, this is an excellent suggestion actually. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we have, ma'am, more questions to go. So should we go ahead with the next question, ma'am?
As you wish. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have a teacher asking this question. Ishita ma'am, she's our English teacher. Ishita ma'am, can we have you with your question?
A very good afternoon to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ma'am, as a student of literature, there have been various texts which have a great involvement of music in them. For instance, D.H. Lawrence's poem, The Piano, or let's say Eric Siegel's love story, or even popular culture like, let's say, Tisri Manzil, where Shami Kapoor plays the piano. I would have liked to ask you, ma'am, are there any such texts or even pieces on the celluloid with the piano or with a very strong musical influence, which have shaped your ideas about music ever since you were a child, which have left behind an indelible impact in your mind?
In films, you are saying, any musical thing?
Films as well as literature, ma'am, because I see both of them connected, ma'am. So anything that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, okay. One thing that immediately comes to my mind this is again having to do with the piano. I think I was in college at that time. This Torun Majumdar's film, was it Dadar Kirti? So there also, in so many Bengal films, there was piano. But the way that piano was played, Hemanta Mukherjee was the music director there. And the way the piano was played, that entire rendering, it's so different. Okay, so that, I was a college student, so very impressionable. So that stuck with me. So that is one thing I remember. Okay, and then of course there are so many other films with Charulata, when he sings Ami Chini Go Chini Tomare, etc. So those stay with the audience. They stay with you, and you want to, you know, go back to it again and again. And of course, Sound of Music. Sound of Music. Yeah, in 1965 we watched for the first time. Again we watched so many times later on when we grew up also. So the Sound of Music, now also if you watch, you learn something new.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so music and films, actually, they are very much interrelated, though they go very well with each other. So that's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ishita ma'am. And now the last question for the day is again from a teacher, Anandi ma'am. She's our history teacher and Heritage Club member. Anandi ma'am, can you please come forward and ask your question?
Thank you, Supriya ma'am. Shubha ma'am, a very good afternoon. My question is, when I was listening or going through the documentary as the clips were being shown, two songs very close to my heart was played. One was Aha Ki Anando Akashe Batashe, taken from Gopi Gayen Bhagamain, a Satyajit Roy classic. And when you just said Ami Chini Go Chini Tomare, also Robindra Sangit like Purano Shei Diner Kotha, they have a westernized pull or some Western influence, and connected to it the piano. So, ma'am, my thought or my question to you is: do you think piano became popular, quote unquote, popular in Kolkata because it's not anymore a Western instrument? It's now a part of Bengali culture. Do you think it became popular because there was some sort of similarity between a piano and a harmonium? The key wise, the look wise, do you think the harmonium's presence in our culture embraced piano? Do you think that's why it became?
No, I don't think so, because if we start with Tagore's, Rabindranath Tagore never encouraged the harmonium for some reason, but piano they have imbibed very much, but he never encouraged the use of the harmonium. Okay, so I don't think what happened is that this also in the course of research found out that, as I said, that well-to-do homes, they all bought piano, and now also if you go walk into their homes, you will see the piano, although it's never used. Okay, or sometimes they hired also, every month they paid a rent for the piano, but they had a piano in the house. And the homes that could not either fit a piano in the house, or maybe they couldn't afford it, they used to have a table organ. All right, so in the film, we will see that Soumendra also playing a table organ. So table organ is a wind instrument. The piano is a string instrument. Table organ is a wind instrument. You paddle with your feet and you play it, and it's much smaller. It's not 8 octaves. I don't know, it's how many, 2.5 octaves, and I'm not very sure how many octaves. It's much smaller. So table organs used to be there, and all the women at least used to have lessons in this this table organ playing. So that's why this keyboard, then the concept of this using keyboards was they accepted that. Okay, harmonia, of course, as an accompanying instrument, even now it is very popular, but the Tagores were never in favor of using harmonium as an accompanying instrument. They preferred the tanpura. So it's not really the harmonium, perhaps. It's more the table organs, piano and its younger brother, in a way, the table organ. Okay, although it's a wind instrument. So that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandi ma'am. And with this, we proceed to our next segment, Vote of Thanks. I would request Sushma ma'am to come forward and deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. So, on behalf of the Heritage Club of Shri Shri Academy, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Ms. Shubha Das Molek and Ms. Anjum Katyal for enlightening our students and sharing their knowledge and for making this session so interesting. I would also like to thank our Principal Suvina ma'am, Vice Principal Gargi ma'am, our PRO Rita ma'am, and Arnav sir for offering all the necessary support. Lastly, heartfelt thanks to all the viewers, especially the students, for their interest. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sushma ma'am. And Shubha ma'am, since you have given your consent, we would now put up the link for your film and would request our students to watch it.
Yeah, watch the whole film.
True feel of it. So here is the link, students, and as you can see, the password for the film would last or would be valid for another 10 days. So hurry up and watch it. And with just one thought, like I read it somewhere that cinema's characteristic forte is its ability to capture and communicate the intimacies of human mind. Yes. So you would definitely agree with this, ma'am. And on this note, we declare today's event over. Thank you so much, ma'am, Anjum ma'am, and Shubha ma'am for being with us.
Thank you very much for involving me.
Yeah, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anjum, for guiding the discussion, and Mrs. Shunglu for taking this decision to have this program, and all the support, technical support and other kind of support. So it has been very enjoyable for us too. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.